I was employee number 3 at a startup, and that went from 0 to 6 million in 2 years. So I had the experience of what it feels like to go through that startup journey. And then I go to him at the end of year 2 and I say, can I get shares in the company? And he says, if you want some shares, you're going to have to start your own company, which was his way of saying no. But I actually was so dumb, I just thought he meant, congratulations, go start your own company. So I quit and started my own company. It went from 0 to 1.3 million in year 1 and 10.7 million in year 3 or 4. So I was 24 years old and we were doing $1 million a month in sales. Yeah, like, I don't know, about 20 people on the team. Got in this 7-bedroom house that we all worked out of. We were kind of like flying constantly between Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, and we were taking clients out all the time and partying and staying in great hotels and like all of that sort of stuff. It was a pretty exciting time to go from 0 to 10 million in like 3 or 4 years.
Welcome back to the You Can Too podcast. On today's show, we have Daniel Priestley. He is an entrepreneur, a 4-time best-selling author, and international speaker. Truthfully, I say this every time, but I feel like I could go on. This entire podcast could be just your accomplishments because you started so young. As an entrepreneur, really, I mean, I want to say 10 years old, you were doing garage sales and everything like that for your life. Like, I want to start here. Do you think that do you think that the trait of being an entrepreneur is something that has a big role in at least your experience, or do you feel anyone can just become an entrepreneur?
I think that everyone is born with curiosity and creativity and disruptive behavior, right? We all grow up being little disruptors. There are situations where we look at how kids naturally want to behave, and it's very entrepreneurial. I don't know many kids that don't want to build stuff and sell stuff and get paid. And then the school system is deliberately built to beat that out of you. The other thing I want to say is that there's no one type of entrepreneur. So some entrepreneurs that I know are really systems focused. They're just all about like geeking out on systems. They're not really people. They want to be in the code. They want to be, coming up with innovations around, processes and, behind the scenes stuff. Some entrepreneurs are superstars. They just want to be on a stage. They want to be kicking the doors off the hinges in front of people. They want to be like having a camera around them all the time, putting stuff out on social media.
Yeah.
Both of those people are entrepreneurs, right? So Bill Gates is more of a quiet guy. Oprah Winfrey, she's very, public. So, there's no one type of entrepreneur. There are plenty of different types of entrepreneurs. So sometimes I see it all the time. You get someone who looks at a super successful entrepreneur and they say, I could never be like Gary Vaynerchuk because he's so loud and he's on camera all the time. You say, well, don't be like Gary Vaynerchuk. Be like one of the entrepreneurs who never is on camera, who's behind the scenes building, or rarely on camera, or that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think everyone can be an entrepreneur. It's just finding your style. It's your approach. It's your way of doing things, your way of creating value.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to dive into that. I think becoming a key person of influence, a lot of people see that as you need to be on social media every single day. You need your life to be social media. How can someone become a key person of influence, and even dive into what that is? But how can they become a key person of influence without having to, really live their life on social media, which it looks like a lot of people, it seems like that has to be a priority.
Well, there's a big difference between look at me versus look at that, right? So if I chase the spotlight, that means I'm just sitting there saying, I want everyone to look at me because I want to be in the spotlight. Imagine instead if I said, I want to become the spotlight. I want to be the guy who shines the light on something important. So, for example, Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple, he stands on the stage and he says, I want you to look at the innovation that the team have just created. I want to look at the products that we've just come up with. I want you to have a look at some of the cool things that we're doing in this particular space. So he's shining the spotlight onto the innovations of Apple. You will never, ever see Tim Cook saying, check out my gym routine. Look what I had for breakfast today. I've got abs, right? None of that stuff. He's not going to live his life in the spotlight. He's becoming the spotlight so he can shine onto something. So the key thing you want to think about is you don't want to be a narcissist. You don't want to be making this about you and your journey. You want to make this about the customer and helping guide the customer. So an entrepreneur who is a key person of influence, the entrepreneur has to become a key person of influence. When you're starting a business, you have to be the one who's going to pitch it. You're going to get people excited. If you raise money, you're going to have to go and talk to investors. If you want employees to come and join you, you're going to have to go and encourage them to quit their job and come and work with you. So you have to enroll people. You have to get people excited about what the business is up to. So that means that you're going to passionately be out there talking about it. You're not talking about yourself. You're talking about what's in it for them. So you're shining the spotlight on the benefits of them being part of something.
Yeah, absolutely. One concept that I've heard for a few years now is that you want to help the person that you were 2 to 5 years ago kind of perspective. And I think that that is a tough thing to think about when, say, I started my business at 17 years old. 2 to 5 years ago, I'm in high school. No one, I'm not going to help that kind of person. So, like, how do you figure out who you want to help, who you want to shine that spotlight on, and kind of
I
gain
don't
that
want
clarity?
to disagree too much, but that's not exactly how I approach it.
Mm,
I am not someone who builds businesses for who I was 2 to 5 years ago.
yeah.
I identify a customer problem that I can see, and I talk to the customer, the ideal customer persona. Let me give you an example. When I launched my Entrepreneur Accelerator 12 years ago, we ran the very first group. We had 50 people on there. And we had some young tech entrepreneurs. We had some people who were coming out of corporate. We had some people who were starting with a new idea. We had some coaches and consultants. So we had these people on the first accelerator. And the superstar was a woman called Tracy, and she really shone. She excelled. She created a great innovation, great product. She published a book. She got her business growing. All of that sort of stuff. So we stopped and we said, "Hey, wait a second. Let's have a look at Tracy. What is it about Tracy that makes her such a great client?" She'd already been in business for 15 years. She already had a team of 5 people. She already had revenue of 500,000 plus. She was doing B2B services. And she had lots of intellectual property. She was comfortable with sales. Now, Tracy was not me, right? Tracy was several years older than me at the time, right? In fact, Tracy was probably almost 7 or 8 years older than I was at that time.
Hmm.
Um, so I wasn't looking to bring on a customer who was me. I was looking to find a customer who was a really good fit for what we do. So what we're looking for is an ideal customer persona. It's called ICP. And we're looking for an ideal customer persona purely and simply for one successful campaign. All we need to do is have an ideal customer for a campaign, one campaign. So you don't have to be out there obsessing about yourself 5 years ago. You can just say, for the next 6 months, I'm going to focus really heavily on going out and getting this type of customer. Now, if I was you, James, I would say, who do I know who's got money, right? Who do I know in my network? Maybe you got some friends of the family. You say, oh, wait a second, I've got a friend of the family who really struggles with social media marketing. Great. I'm going to go and pick up that client and actually do that for him because I'm comfortable with social media and they're not comfortable with it. I'm going to go and help that friend of the family who's got a big business and they want some support. And they might sit there and say, you know what, I'll happily pay 5 grand, 10 grand to get you to do all that for me. Now that's not you 5 years ago, right? That's you in 25 years from now. So so keep that in mind. You're looking for someone with money. You're looking for a person who's got money to spend. And what's their problem? What is it that they want to spend that money on? And there's a good chance that it's not you 5 years ago. You had no money 5 years ago.
Exactly. Because it's like it's a much different perspective when you're trying to sell a service of some sort. I realized that when I was 18 years old and I sold a client for 40, that was 43 years old. It made
Yeah.
no sense to me until, like, contextually it was like I'm getting told that I should try to work for with someone that's past me, but didn't make sense because obviously that person's much older than me. So it's a much different perspective. When you were going through the, like, I mean, starting with the startup that you were working with, did you just really just take what was there and then kind of lead into creating your own, or like how do you go about finding that problem in the market that you specifically want to fill? Because there's so many problems, right?
It's funny, the more successful you become as an entrepreneur, you just see opportunities everywhere on
Mm,
every single block. It blows my mind when people are like, oh, I'm not sure there are any opportunities left. It's like there's just so many. Um,
yeah.
when I launched my very first startup, I was replicating what my mentor had taught me. My
Yeah.
mentor taught me to focus on baby boomers. My mentor
Mm,
told me that baby boomers was the most affluent generation. This was even 20 years ago, and they said, you've got to focus on the baby boomer market because that's going to be the most affluent generation. And he basically said, this is they read newspapers. You got to advertise in the newspaper. So I was never focused on anyone like myself. I was focused on markets that I could learn from and understand from. And even to this day, 10% of baby boomers have 65% of the income and the wealth in the economy. So realistically, if you want to make fast money, if you want to make a lot of money, you should still focus on baby boomers, or at least have a look at baby boomers as an option.
Yeah. When you were 18, your story's insane, and obviously you lived it, so you know that. But you moved out at 18, and you moved into a house with 5 people, lived in a garage, had so little money that you'd save for like a meal, like a kind of thing.
Yeah.
You drive across town, all of that kind of thing. I'm curious for you, like that leap in itself. What did that teach you about yourself? What did that teach you about the world, about business? How did that transform the way that you looked at the world?
Well, it was a great adventure. I really loved moving out, and I loved living with 5 people in one tiny little house with 3 bedrooms. And it was really, it wasn't a hard story. I really enjoyed going down to this place and finding that there was this carpet that they were going to throw away. And I put that carpet onto the garage floor. And then I went and found this mattress manufacturer, and they had like mattresses that had mistakes in the stitching. So they were like selling some of their mattresses really cheap. And I put one of those on the floor, and I had a mattress on the floor on a piece of carpet. But, it was like such an adventure. It was like going out on my own, total independence. And I started from absolute scratch. So I was a Pizza Hut delivery driver really late into the night. So I would always, every single night, I would do like 9 p.m. till 1 a.m. I was working in bars on Friday and Saturday night. I was knocking on doors, appointment setting on Saturday and Sunday. And I was trying to do university through the week. And then on top of that, I started my nightclub party business, where I became a nightclub party promoter. And, but it was just great. Like, I just didn't want to sit around. I wanted to get on. I wanted to get out there and start.
Yeah, I feel that energy. I definitely know that. I know that kind of that always trying to be in movement of some sort. I feel like if I'm not moving, I'm wasting the time that I'm given. About like, this is the energy that I'm given right now. Let me take advantage of it and move forward.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with work shifted since that period of time? Because of course now you're in a much different position, and
I'll tell
curious.
you, that energy still really burns inside me. If I was a single guy with no kids, I would be the most unbelievably belligerent, single-minded, focused. Like, I would just work all the time. I would roll out of bed because I love, like, the type of work that I do is highly creative, and it's
Mhm,
highly rewarding. It's rewarding on all fronts. I earn a ton of money. I have a lot of fun.
mhm,
I create stuff. So I'm buying and selling businesses. I sold a company 12 months ago. I just bought it back off the right, and now I'm gonna do something with it again. And I've got like 8 companies in the group, and where I just submitted a new book to my publisher, and
mhm.
so like I'm having fun with life. I'm just enjoying like creating stuff. The difference is now is, and this will happen to you at some point, is that I have 3 little kids, and I have a family and my wife, and you have to, obviously, and I want to, and I love um, having a blend, right? So like I was just playing with the kids, and but no, there's definitely there's something inside me that like just really loves to work. I love working.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's like when I started this podcast, I always say I felt called to not push to do it. And if you feel called to do something, like you want to do it, even if you made no money from it forever, like that's the thing that you should lean into. For you, when you joined the company, I think it was you were employee number 3 when you joined the
Mm-hmm.
company that you first worked with. And then you went from about over a little bit over 1 million in your first year, and then about over 10 within 3 years. What was that? What was the J hook? Like, how did that like just scale so
So
much? What do
so
you? Yeah.
there was the first startup. I was employee number 3 at a startup,
Mm,
and that went from 0 to 6 million in 2 years. So I had the experience of what it feels like to go through that startup journey.
yeah.
And I did all the jobs. So I was calling up and making appointments. I was making sales. I was booking at venues. I was, running ad campaigns, traveling a lot. So for 2 years, I really was just going full on into startup mode for my boss. and I was his fixer. So if he just needed something done, his first port of call was just get me to do it. So he might say, well, we need boardrooms booked. And I'm like, okay, I'm on it. And he might say, I need some ads run in the newspaper. And I'm like, have we got the creative? No, we need to come up with the creative. I'll come up with something and then you can edit it. So like constantly, I'm just like doing stuff. And then I go to him at the end of year 2 and I say, can I get shares in the company? And he says, if you want some shares, you're going to have to start your own company, which was his way of saying no. But I actually was so dumb. I just thought he meant, congratulations, go start your own company. So I quit and started my own company. And then it exploded. It went from 0 to 1.3 million in year 1 and 10.7 million in year 3 or 4. So I was 24 years old and we were doing $1 million a month in sales. Like, I don't know, about 20 people on the team, huge house. I'd gotten this 7-bedroom house that we all worked out of. And it was really wild. We were kind of like flying constantly between Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, and we were taking clients out all the time and partying and staying in great hotels and like all of that sort of stuff. It was a pretty exciting time to go from 0 to 10 million in like 3 or 4 years. And there were quite a few reinventions in those 3 or 4 years. So it was a very intense 3 or 4 years to go through.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean,
what was the question?
Yeah, I mean, what was the J hook for like what? Obviously, you worked with your mentor, and so that gave you like an idea of how things are gonna look. But I think for a lot of people, they can still be a part of something and then still not understand how to do it on their own, or even be able to have the confidence to take the leap and do it on their own. I know that for you, like, of course, it was you didn't get the shares, so that there wasn't much leeway, and you had the skill to be able to move and do it on your own. But what do you think scaled it so quick?
It was basically, there was a couple of things. Number one, it wasn't so much confidence. I didn't know what else to do, right? So when I left John, I knew that I had to put ads on my credit card and basically I had to make enough money quickly to pay off my credit card. So I stick $7,000 or $8,000 on the credit card and then I only have 50 days tops in order to pay back the credit card, or else I start paying big fines. And so essentially I had to generate leads and make sales quick. And because that happened and that worked, I thought, well, better run another ad. So as soon as I had my credit card cleared, I thought, let's run more ads. And then I just got in the habit of like running an ad on the Sunday, generating the leads, making the sales through the week, and then running an ad the next Sunday. So it kind of like we just repeated the same week over and over and over again. And we just made little tweaks and we just did perfect repeatable week, the same week over and over and over. And then there came this moment where this guy approached me when I was like 22 and he said, your ads are really performing so well. I can see how many leads you're generating. You're doing much better than us. And he was similar industry, similar competitor. He goes, I really admire the ads that you run, and would you be willing to write my ads for me? Would you be willing to help me do my ads? And I said to him, I don't know where I got this idea from, but I said to him, I will redo your ads, but I want to split the savings with you. So whatever your current cost per lead is, whatever we bring it down to, you pay me the half of the difference for the next 6 months. And so I cut this deal with him, and he ended up paying me $90,000. And I'd only spent 3 hours on those ads. So I'd like basically done some changes to his ads and redone the ads and then given him the creative. It was like half a day's worth of work and it was 90 grand. And I'm like, damn, okay, I need to pause every now and then and come up with something. I ended up buying a really nice car with that 90 grand and like just thinking, damn, this whole car like took me 3 hours. So that happened. And then I started this idea of like, I need to go out and poke my head up and start looking for other opportunities. So I went to the Franchise Expo to try and see if I could find any businesses that might be good opportunities, just looking at stuff to get ideas, to get stimulation.
Yeah.
One of my friends, Kevin Harrington, he says you've got to go and get opportunity overload. You have to go and have hundreds of opportunities that you expose yourself to, so you can start understanding what makes the difference between a good one and a bad one. I think it's a good idea. So I went to this franchise expo, and I see this franchise that the guy is a kind of charismatic CEO, and he's pitching a room, and I go, well, I can fill your room for you. Like, I know how to fill that room. You don't have to be at the franchise expo. And I'm like, what did you spend coming here? And he's like, oh, it was $35,000. And I'm like, well, I can get you a way better result. Let me take over the contract, and we will actually help you scale. So I formed this partnership with this franchise, and then I took over the advertising and the marketing. And then, because we both didn't really expect it to go so well, we'd cut quite a generous split to cover all of my costs and all this stuff. But then it went really well, and suddenly we're just like I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars like monthly, and it was like, holy shit, we're flying.
Yeah, it's like it is what leverage is. You found like multiple different ways to build leverage. And I think I don't remember when I came across that perspective of what leverage was, but it blew my mind when I realized, like, I'm not gonna when I was working in like retail, and I was making a certain amount of money per hour, and then I realized no matter what I do, this is the only amount of money I can make, terrified me. Like my body I couldn't be there much longer. And so I'm curious, like, what do you feel has the biggest impact on creating leverage, or like what skill do you think that has had the biggest impact on your ability to create leverage, I guess?
So credibility is normally the number one thing that stands in the way of leverage. So the best forms of leverage are gated leverage, protected leverage. So if you think about things like venture capital or private equity funding, it's behind a big fat gate. If you think about fame, it's behind a big gate. If you think about corporate budgets, they're normally behind big gates. So there are all around you, like within 5 miles from your front door, there are massive life-changing forms of leverage. And it comes in the form of fame, capital, distribution channels, big budgets, all of that sort of stuff. It's all going on around you. It's buzzing around you. But you have to have the key to the gate to get through the gate. And the key is credibility. You've got to be able to present yourself with credibility, because when you go to a venture capital firm, they're going to look at you and say, well, what's your credibility? If you walk in there and say, I've just quit my job at Facebook, where I was the senior developer at, AI Research Inc., they're going to go, oh, come on in, right?
Yeah.
Credibility. If you go to a corporate budget and you say, hey, this is how I've been doing things over at, Google. Okay, cool. Come on in. Like, credibility. So what happened for me was, I started with a startup that went from 0 to 6 million. That gave me credibility to pick up the phone and start getting people booked and get the deals in place to get my first business off the ground. That went from 0 to 1 million in the first year. That gave me the credibility to write the ad for the guy and get the 90,000 for three hours and leverage his spend. And then that gave me the credibility to pitch this guy and say, I can take on the marketing of your franchise at 23 years old. I will be the guy who does it. So I was snowballing up my credibility. And every time I got an inch of extra credibility, I leveraged that. I used that credibility to try and access a greater amount of leverage. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I want to like press on this, because I think this is something I found, like, for example, my sister's in social work. And so for her to get a higher level job, she needs experience to get into a higher level job. But she needs the experience, and she can't get the experience because you're required experience. So say for something like that, or even like someone that hasn't been able to get that experience, whether it's being part of startup or building their own company, how do you gain that credibility? Do you find it on social media, or where do you feel that you can kind of lean into that?
So there are several things you can do to lean in and get more credibility. Everything you do, you can write up the case study. You can write up the story. So, for example, if I was working in social work and I had a breakthrough with a particular person, I would try and publish something about that on my LinkedIn profile. Obviously, you keep the anonymous things anonymous and you keep the names, but you try and say, hey, I was recently working with a 16-year-old who was struggling with this. Here's how we made the changes. This was the breakthrough that we got. And you publish it in the public domain, and you put that out there. So that would be potentially credibility. You would look for, are there awards that you could enter that look at social impact or social good, and you take some of those case studies and you enter them for awards. You then ask yourself the question, if I have the ability to transform somebody's situation who's in a very difficult situation, is there anywhere else that skill would be valuable and transferable that would just give me more leverage? So, for example, if you go to a senior, like a private school where the kids are paying huge amounts of money in fees, maybe part of your time could be becoming an on-campus support for those kids. Maybe you could go to a top university and say, hey, we can help with any of these social issues because we've worked with difficult cases. We can actually work with these cases really easy if anyone's struggling. So you start sort of trying to leverage up a little bit, parlay up. Now, it's obviously, look, I'm ignoring the obvious, which is your sister probably has a calling or a passion for social work, right? She probably has a picture in her head as to what she's trying to achieve. I'm purely approaching it from the view of entrepreneurship and leverage and all of that sort of stuff. But hats off to her. If her calling is social work and that's where she wants to be, and that's, and the intangible rewards are worth it, then much respect.
Yeah, I think that's how we're a lot different. I have the entrepreneurial mindset and I want to help people. She has the not entrepreneurial mindset and wants to help people. And so it's like it's a much different perspective. But I think like the same thing hand in hand. Like when I started when I was 17, I had all the imposter syndrome in the world because I became a coach, and I was like, how am I going to become a quote unquote life coach helping people? And I barely lived a life, right? Like that was the beliefs that I always got told.
At least you were self-aware.
Yeah, right. Of course, of course. And even to this day, I'm 20 and I still have that, that voice in my head. And I think no matter what we do, no matter what we accomplish, it seems like most people still always have that. I find that the one thing that I think is really valuable, or that a lot of people struggle with for sure, is that they don't have like a tangible offer, if that makes sense. Like they don't have something that from point A to point B, they don't have that. Maybe will help them move towards point B, but can't really get point B. What do you say to someone that's needs to really get a better offer, gain more credibility by being more deliberate about that?
The first thing I want to say is that if you're under 30, do not discount the value of just working on somebody else's team. That is a huge value. So you don't necessarily have to answer all of these questions. Genuinely, there are times where I wish I had the bandwidth that I could just simply go work for Elon Musk if I could, right? Like if I had the ability to just say, like if I could just say, hey, look, I'll pause everything for a little bit. I'm going to go do 6 months working with Elon.
Yeah.
I would love to if I could do 6 months working with Elon, I'd do 6 months working with Elon. But that's because of where I'm at with my journey, that I need to find someone who's right up there. If you are under 30, haven't started a business before, I would say look into your local entrepreneur ecosystem and find someone who's in startup mode, who's been funded, and look around for anyone who's already had more than $500,000 worth of funding allocated in the last 6 months, and go and see if you can work on their team so that you're working around a funded startup. And whether it succeeds or fails, you're going to get all the lessons while also earning an income. So that would be a really important thing. Do 6 to 12 months working in a funded startup, early stage startup. You're going to learn so much from that experience. And obviously try and be a bit picky, someone who's been around a few times before. Second time founders are 100% more likely to succeed than first time founders. So if you can get working for a second or third time founder, that's going to be massively valuable. When it comes time to create your first offer, so I'm looking for 3 things. I'm looking for something that you have passion for. And I define passion in really pragmatic terms. Passion for me is that your origin story, your background lines up to this, and that you have a strong sense as to what you want to see in the future, which is your vision, and that you have a strong sense as to how you can add value today, and that you want to do that thing. So it's like, my background is X, right? Origin, mission, vision, right? Batman. The background is that he was a victim of crime and he inherited $1 billion. His vision is Gotham City free from crime. and his mission is to use his family fortune to create gadgets that strike fear into the heart of bad guys. So it's like, okay, origin, mission, and vision is all nicely lined up. That to me is passion. Now, a lot of people think about passion as an emotion, but emotions come and go.
Yeah.
What I like is to just say, hey, look, do you have the right origin story, mission, and vision? That's all I'm looking for, that it lines up nicely. So I want that in place. Number two, I'm looking for a market of people who've got money to spend and they've got a problem that they want to throw money at. And I'm looking at, can I get a overlap of, here's this group of people here, they have this money to spend, they've got a problem, they experience a negative emotion from that problem, and that they see the value in just spending money on getting that. And then the next thing is, can I orchestrate a solution? Can I come up with the strategy for it? Can I come up with the implementation? Can I come up with the resources? Can I come up with the suppliers? Can I ring fence that problem and destroy it from about 4 different angles so that problem disappears for that person and that they can see that the problem is gone? So I'm doing a lot of work to ask questions. Tell me about how you experience the problem. What does the daily paper cut look like? What does it feel like to stub your toe on this particular problem? How did you first discover the problem? What do you think are the long implications of the problem? What have you tried in the past that didn't work? What do you think would work? What would be the budget that you would happily spend to get rid of this? Okay, great. Solutions. Let's go and research all the different ways and find the best ways to do it. Package it up better, cheaper, faster with more emotional benefits. Bang, let's get that in front of the customer. And then for me personally, my belief around an offer is that you test your offer with a brochure. So you actually produce something, right? Some little piece of paper, and you go and you take that to your customer and you say, okay, here's what we've created. You don't want to do a website, because a website, you can't see how they react in the moment. You want to be able to, you want to take them a printed brochure. I know this sounds old school, but you go up and you basically say, here's what I've created. I've created this, and it includes all of these things. And you walk them through the brochure and you say, what are your thoughts on this? If this was available to you for $2,500 a month, would this solve the problem? Would this be the type of thing you'd want, right? What would you need to know in order for you to feel comfortable with this? So it's worth considering that a product is a product because it sells. Because if I put a product on a shelf and it doesn't sell, very rapidly it ends up in landfill. It's gone, right? A product is not a product. So a product is not a product if it doesn't sell. A product is only a product if it sells. So essentially, what we want to do is say, forget about how this thing's made, how it's created. Let's just see if we can sell it. So if we can sell it with a brochure, that's all we need to discover. And we don't want to spend any time or money other than putting together a brochure and seeing if it sells. And then if it sells, then we figure out how we're going to build it.
Yeah, that was one thing that my first mentor really ingrained into my mind, is that, like, I still to this day don't even have a website, because it's like, if you don't have clients, you don't have a business. There's no business if there's no clients coming in, and that's the whole purpose of it, right? If you're not working with anyone, like, I'd like to say, like, if you don't have clients, you're not a coach, kind of thing. There's no, because you're not helping anybody.
Yeah.
And so that's been something for me, is trying to figure out what that tangible outcome looks like, because the A to B isn't, so, like, I'm moving him in the direction of B, but maybe there's not a tangible outcome to B, if that makes sense.
Yeah, coaching. Well, here's the thing. If you're a coach, you identify predominantly as a coach, which means you are selling coaching services. You're selling higher performance through coaching. If you're an entrepreneur, you're one step back from that, and you'd probably be the type of person who looks at what is the coach trying to achieve, and is there a better, faster, cheaper way of achieving that, or can I hire coaches cheaper than I can sell them for? So that would be the entrepreneur thinking a little bit differently to this. Here's the interesting thing for you, right? You mentioned imposter syndrome. I don't really believe in imposter syndrome in a big way, because, and I know you don't either, right? But the idea is that you have an awareness, right? You have an awareness, and the awareness is, I'm 20 years old and I'm calling myself a life coach. What do I know about life, right? I've only had 2 decades, and most of them I can't even remember. So it's
Very
like, right? So this is the thing. So on one level, you're having an awareness of a shortcoming. Rather than ignoring that awareness, it's better to explore the awareness and say, why do I think that way? Is there another angle to this? So when you explore it from a different angle, you may discover a new perspective. If you're standing on top of a mountain, huge mountain, you look around and you can see absolutely everything other than the mountain. You can see the mountains on the horizon, you can see all of the landscape, but you cannot see the mountain that you're standing on until someone helps you to see things from a different perspective. When you're 20 years old saying you're a life coach, you need to be able to say, what I offer is really fresh, energizing perspective, right? I ask dumb questions. I ask naive questions. I don't have the baggage. I don't have the family. I don't have the kids. I don't have the house. I don't have all of that stuff. So it means that I approach things with extremely fresh energy, and I approach things with that vitality and that enthusiasm of youth. And what I bring to my clients is enthusiasm of youth, right? Most of my clients say that I make them feel and tap into how they felt when they were a lot younger. And that allows them to feel more brave, more excitement, more energy with a fresh set of perspective. And, you know, there is actually a word for this, by the way. There's a word called a muse. A muse, throughout all of history, a muse is someone who is a younger person who brings back the creativity in an older person. You know, these artists and sculptors who had completely lost their edge, suddenly they get a muse in their life. They get someone who there is an apprentice or a trainee or someone around them who's young, and suddenly they get their creativity back. They can write again, they can create again, they can do art again. And it's almost in literature, it's almost always a younger person who brings back the spark. So, you know, the mountain of value that you're standing on is the obvious, to me, it's the obvious mountain, but you're so close to it that it's so, like, for you, it's like you're standing on it so you can't see it. But to me, it's like, actually, who am I as a life coach? I'm a very blank sheet of paper, right? I don't bring any baggage with me. I'm not here to tell you to suck eggs. I'm not speaking from a place of experience. I'm speaking from a place of energy. I'm speaking from a place of naivety. I'm here to bring out that creativity in you, that creativity of youth. And it's like, bang, that makes total sense.
Yeah. You've explained that better than I can explain that to anyone. And it makes a lot of sense, obviously, with the books that you've written. And it is profound. And I definitely do see that as that way, because the lady that I was speaking about earlier, that was 43, I worked with her when I was 18. She was an author, and she had an idea for a book for almost a decade, and within 6 months she started moving that forward and got Pulitzer Prize and all that different kind of stuff. And it was like, all I did was just ask questions. Like I think that's what coaches are. We ask questions. We don't have the answers, kind of thing. I believe it's like I'm able to believe in someone more than they can believe in themselves, and sometimes that's just what we need. And I think another struggle, and I'll lean into this because I love the way that you just explained that. I think a lot of people would get value from it too, is knowing that that's the case for me. I've worked with people that are 17 all the way to 25 to 21 to 30 to 43. How do I figure out who I should target if that is the case, if that's the idea of a muse kind of thing?
Well, in which case, if I were you, I would be cheeky enough and brash enough to go and talk to people who are much older. And the key thing is to get outside your comfort zone and talk to someone who perhaps is, 40 plus, 45 plus, 50 plus, and essentially pitch them on the idea that, look, the one thing I can't be as your coach, I can't be a consultant. I can't tell you what the answer is because I don't know the answer. You know more than I do.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something that is my shortcoming. When I'm in a coaching role, I've had 20 plus more years of experience than you. I can't freaking help myself. That when I know the answer, I just tell people the answer.
Yeah.
I don't bother with the coaching. I just do the consulting. I just go, here's the answer. Like, go do it like this. So there's what's called pure coaching, and pure coaching is where the coach really does just stick to the questions and really lets the person explore and really lets them come to their own conclusion. It's actually extremely hard to do pure coaching when you've got a lot of experience. because that experience has to shape your worldview. You can't turn it
Mm-hmm.
off. So if someone believes in the idea of pure coaching, that there is such thing as a coaching process, and that the coaching process brings out a better answer from you, then the question becomes, well, can you even access pure coaching from someone who is quite intelligent or quite experienced, right? Not intelligent, quite experienced. It's like, well, it's very difficult, very, very hard. It's actually quite easy to tap into that spark if you've got the spark of youth. So I think there's something for you in going and having conversations with people where it makes you feel uncomfortable and confronting it head on. The older you pitch to, the numbers that feel big for you are not big for them.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk to someone who's been around the block a little bit, if you say, it's 10 grand, like pretty much everything's 10 grand once you get to a certain age. So like it's hard, it's like it's no big deal. It's going to feel 10 grand is going to feel a lot smaller to someone who's older than someone who's 20, 27.
Yeah, very true. And I haven't really thought about it in that way. And I mean, with doing the podcast every single week, I'm reinforcing the questions kind of thing. It's like the curiosity is just there. And so I always try to come from that perspective to dive into the idea of money. I'd love to dive into that for you, because your perception of money, your relationship with money has had to have changed from when your mentor asked you to hold $1,000 in your pocket so that you could actually start feeling like it was something that you could get and it wasn't like a scarce resource.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with money changed from that moment in time, from the Daniel that was then and the Daniel that became a multimillionaire and has done so much since then?
So money in the beginning was very real. So money felt extremely real, so much so that when I got a speeding ticket or a parking ticket one time, it really broke me. I had a
Yeah.
massive fight with my friend. We had both been out. I wanted to split the ticket because we'd both chosen to go out and we were both on the same thing. He wanted me to pay for the ticket because it was my car and I had driven. And I thought it was only fair we split it. He thought it was only fair that it was all on me. We had this massive fight. It was like $30 or $40, and it was a parking ticket. And it was, it drove a wedge between us. We had a real fight over that. Even to this day, there's part of me that's still a little bit from that time. Like I will walk into a petrol station to buy bottles of water, and I'll look at like how much each one is, and it's like so stupid. It's like it's not worth my time to look. But I'm like, oh, okay, wait a sec. This one's $3, and this one. Oh, it's like, why is that one $1 more? Okay, I'm going to get this one. So, like, there's still the kind of remnants of that. Strangely, I have more emotion towards small money than big money. When it comes to big money, it's like, okay, we need to put 100 grand into that thing, or we need to put $1 million into that thing, or we just like last week. Last week there was an outstanding amount of $700,000 that was due to be paid, and it didn't come through. And essentially, okay, well, we need to just handle that and sort that out. But I have no emotion around $700,000. It's like, okay, well, we just have to sort that out. It's just a problem, and we'll fix it. No biggie. But it's strange, strangely and weirdly, the stuff that I kind of had in my mind from when I had no money is still emotional, and the stuff that now is not so emotional. As it stands right now, the bigger the numbers are, like it really just doesn't even, we wanted to launch a new trial business, a new AI business, and I thought, okay, I'll bring on some angel investors. I hosted a little Zoom call and presented the idea, and then I said, let me know if you want to invest. $600,000 comes in within an hour. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Nice.
well, all right, we'll do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny. Where I'm at now is it's just an abstract. It's very much just an abstract idea. It's just stuff costs a number, and we just need to find the number. And there's really not a lot of emotion except for bottles of water.
It's the small things. I don't know what it is
It's
because I resonate so much with that. It's not even funny. When I invested into a coaching program to like really step into this idea of becoming a coach when I was 17, and I invested, it was close to $10,000. And I remember the first
nice.
investment was $2,500, and I put it down and I walked out of my room, went to my mom, and I was like, I just spent $2,500, and that's not it. Like that, like there's many more payments coming through, and I just had like all of the anxiety in the world. And ever since then, it's been like I'll think about the dollar that I'm spending when I'm going into a grocery store or something like that. But when I spend money on investing into a coach or something like that, it doesn't I don't even think about it
It
because
feels
it's
normal.
yeah, it is really normal. It's a weird thing. So do you feel like money's obviously an abundance of but a resource, but not more of like a scarcity? Has that shifted for you, or do you still feel like do
Oh,
you like yeah,
well, as I say, there's these two brains inside my head. Uh,
yeah,
when I grab my jacket out of the cupboard and I haven't worn it for ages, and I check in the pocket and there's 20 pounds in the pocket, I'm
yeah.
like, yes, woohoo, there's 20 pounds in the pocket. When I
Yeah.
rationalize expenses and we wipe 15 grand worth of costs out per month and we just run a ruler through and we go, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, cool, we just saved 15 grand a month. Um, that has zero impact, but finding 20 pounds feels emotionally rewarding. Rationalizing expenses and saving £15,000, zero energy. I feel that this is the most. I mean, genuinely, most of my life is there's so much people are not tapped into. There is so much money on the planet, right?
Mhm.
So it's in too few people's hands, but there is so much, and the people whose hands the money is in, they want to get rid of it. They really do. Like they're not sitting there hoarding onto it. They just
Yeah.
want sensible things to put it into, or sometimes nonsensible things to put it into. They want to spend it. They want to move it around. They want to invest it. They want to back young entrepreneurs, but they want to back someone who's a bit sensible. Um, but there is so much money out there. The government just like pumped trillions of dollars into the economy over the last couple of years, and it's just flooding around there. I mean, what is inflation? You see inflation on the news. Inflation is too much money looking for too few goods and services. What better ad do you want on a billboard for entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
Right now, there is too much money and not enough goods and services. Get out there. Like it's if we were surfers, this would be like right now there are perfect 6 foot barreling waves. So it's like this is the time to do it. I will say this: it's a very awkward time because one thing is definitely happening right now. There is a wedge, and you'll see it on it. If you live in a big city in the US, you're going to see on the exact same block. There's homeless people. There's people like who are
Mhm.
clearly up to no good, low level crime, and then on the same block, there's like multi-millionaires who are working in
Yeah.
that building. And this wedge is coming through society and it's pushing people to each side of the wedge. That
Mhm.
one person's going to get there. It's only going to speed up. In the next 10 years, artificial intelligence is going to drive a wedge through society. And basically, it looks like this: half of your friends, James, are going to become addicted to computer games, to apps, to content. They're going to sit there just constantly down a rabbit hole because AI is going to figure out how their brain works and it's going to get them hooked on whatever it takes to get them hooked on. And it will
Mhm.
be consuming games, content, YouTube videos, right? All of that stuff, right? So they'll be stuck down that rabbit hole and it'll be so beautifully done that it'll be impossible to stop
Yeah.
consuming. And then there'll be a small number of your friends, one or two out of 100, and they're going to discover that AI allows you to create at speed, and they're going to like spin up a website and spin up a bunch of copy, and they're going to use AI to like come up with all the answers for stuff, and they're going to you know create this product, and they're going to create this distribution channel, and they're going to write an email to the CFO of this company using ChatGPT, and then they're going to respond, and then they're going to put it into French and open up in the French markets. Boom, 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 boom. And all
Yeah.
of this stuff's going to just happen, and they're going to be like 28 years old doing mergers and acquisitions and boom, 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 accessing capital. And they're going to go, wow, this is amazing. Like 3 or 4 of us friends, we just created a company and it's doing 20 million bucks. And they're using AI to create versus people who are using AI to consume, or being used by AI to consume. And what's really tragic is that you will know people, James, 10 years from now, where you will shake your head and think they had so much potential. They were so smart. They were so lovely. They had all this potential. And now they're just sitting around like a gamer down a YouTube rabbit hole, doing this nonsense. And they could have been doing this great, they could have been living this incredible life, but they got caught in the AI trap.
It's the whole reason I started this podcast. Was I when I came across the idea that this entire world, the rules that we live by, was built up by someone or people no smarter than us. And when I really took on that and I sat with it and I really thought about it, it's like, well, then why are so many people settling for something that's less than what they'd like, right? Like, I just never can't sit with that. It's the same thing that you said that you still have to this day, is like, we're here to create. And we need to be we need to be out, we need to be putting stuff into the world. I always say that you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world. And at
It's
the end of
so
the day, it's
true.
just it's a lack of belief at the end of the day. I think we don't believe it's possible. We can't see it as an option even. What do you feel is like the core reason that most people, whether they don't get into business or they fail at business?
It's the schooling system. The schooling system was designed, especially in the US, right? The
Hmm.
US is really ground zero for this. The schooling system was designed to create a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers, or creators. What they wanted is they wanted component labor. All through the industrial age, there was no benefit in being a really creative, fun, dynamic, entertaining, disruptive young guy. That wasn't a job, right?
Hmm.
And maybe they were doing it from the goodness of their heart. Maybe they knew that that wasn't a job. So they created a schooling system that beat that out of you. And they basically said, look, what you need to be, James, is you just need to be component labor. You need to come and work in our factory and do what you're told and do it for 40 years. We'll put a little bit of money aside. So when you get too old, we'll have some money set aside for you to retire. But you need to become a piece in our machine. And that was the original plan. The plan was create these workers who can fill the factory jobs. And when I say factory jobs, Goldman Sachs is a factory. IBM is a factory. Microsoft is a factory. It's not just factories in terms of making physical products. It's factories as in sitting at a desk, doing repetitive stuff, not being a disruptive force, not being a creator, just do what you're told. So the whole schooling system is designed around that central premise, that central idea. And what the schooling system's trying to get you to do is tone down disruptive, creative, innovative, humorous, fun, spirited parts of yourself.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see. I can't think of another word, because I remember when there's a quote that I resonate so much with. I think a lot of people would resonate with it. Is like, you realize everyone has two lives, and the second one starts when you realize you only have one, right? My father and uncle both passed away at 37 years old, and so
Wow.
like they passed away real young, and seeing that, it was like they worked their entire life to get to that point. My grandfather passed away right a few months before his retirement, and so the
Wow.
seeing, like, I seen it in real time. The you work to hopefully experience retirement, and then some people won't even be able to get to experience that. And so it's really sad to see that that is the way the world works. And I wish I could take back all the time that I spent in school learning stuff that never will never matter to me, like, rather than taking in your books and other people's like
Well,
that. But
here's the thing: awareness that went on is
yeah.
half the battle. Like, who you are deep down is this creative, innovative person, and it's still there. You can't, you can't you can reignite that. The other thing too is I genuinely do feel that the schooling system was probably right for the times that we were in. And
Yeah.
it was probably only very recently that it could have even been beneficial to be anything other than what the schooling system makes you to become. I really do understand that if you go back to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, like, really, what is the benefit in everyone being highly creative and innovative. Like if you don't have a computer to make something, if you don't have the means of production, if you can't get an idea out to the world, if you can't promote something to a group of people, like there's really not a huge point in being, in a local village and being the funny disruptor type person. Like that's just not gonna do anything. You're not gonna put a roof over your head. You're not gonna be a valuable, you're not gonna be very useful to anyone. So I totally get it. I really totally get it. It's really the technology has shifted in the last 15 years, and the schooling system is a big oil tanker. It's not going to turn around in any, in 10 years. It's going to turn around in 20 years. 20 years from now, it'll be a very different system. But just take, it's a 200-year-old system. So it's going to take a couple of decades to shift. But when we spot it early, it doesn't mean we have to wait for it to shift. We can just start making those changes now and just say, hey, thank you, schooling system, for doing the best you knew what to do, but I'll take it from here. I'm really good. Like I'm going to play a different game. I appreciate why you taught me that, but the world's changed and I've recognized the changes. I don't even think it's the schooling system's job to try and get you ahead. I think it's the schooling system's job is to try and create a higher bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we want to make sure that people don't go into the low of the low of the low. We want the people to only fall down this far. But I don't think it's the government. It's not the government's job to get you to become epic and elite. Like it's your job to become epic and elite. It's the government's job to make sure you don't fall through a crack. But ultimately, it's your job to climb up and do something. So, that's I think it's especially now that you can.
Yeah, I think the difference is that they try to set us up to play not to lose rather than playing to win. Right? That's the shift. And I think that's when I realized, like, I don't want to have to think through the lens of playing to lose throughout my entire life, or trying not to play to lose like that. That's terrifying. And that's a state of scarcity that is
play to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and you've done that in everything that you've done. So, man, I'm so grateful for your time. There's one last question I ask every guest, and it really encapsulates what I want to do with the podcast. The question is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Okay, so the belief that I'm currently unlearning is that your fitness declines after 40. And I'm actually relearning that at any age, if you hit it hard 3 times a week in the gym and you got a personal trainer and you give your body what it needs, you could be in the best physical shape of your life at any age. So that's probably the belief that at the moment I'm unlearning. It's a great question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I had Mark Sisson on the podcast a few weeks ago, and to see that man's in his, I think he's about to be, I think he's 70 actually, and to see the shape that he's in is mind-boggling. So I love to hear that, and thank you. It's definitely a question. I think because the level that you're at, people would probably think that you've achieved everything and that's it, and you're done for. But it's like the constant unlearning of things that hold us back from that next level.
I'm just getting started. I'm just getting warmed up, James.
Yeah, I know that. I love that, and you can tell, man. Your energy comes through.
I need to let you know something, James.
Please.
Statistically, what age do you think a founder is when they start the business that makes them a millionaire?
I already know. It's 40.
It's 42. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew. So, I looked that up. Yep.
So they start their business at 42. Mm-hmm. And at what age does a founder sell the company and become a multimillionaire on average?
I'm going to guess 65 to 68.
It's actually 57. So it's a 15-year journey. So on average, a founder starts the business at 42, 15 years later sells it for millions at 57. Now, of course, there's plenty of examples of people who do it in their 20s and people who do it at different ages. But isn't it nice to know, especially for yourself, that you've got, at the field that you've chosen to get into, you've got 22 years before you even begin you're in pre-season for 22 years. Anything you do in the next 22 years is a bonus. You are in bonus territory, right? With anything you do, you've literally, the game doesn't even begin for another 22 years. So you could do 3 multi-million-dollar startups. You could earn hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And then at age 42, the clock starts again and it's like, cool, now it's time to begin. Now, the reason I say that is I'm 42. I was 42 this year. And it was so liberating to find that statistic because it's like, cool. my last 20, 21 years have just been like my apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So watch this space, mate. I'm just getting started.
Yeah, no, we know that your energy, it comes across real for sure. I mean, I started at 17 and I'm now 20, and I feel like a veteran and just getting started at the same time. And it's so funny when you say that, because yeah, when you put that into perspective, I think a lot of people are trying to get somewhere so quick, and it's like, why are you running to retirement? You should be running to something that you feel in alignment with, so you can keep running and keep running. It's the playing the infinite games thing, and you're definitely do it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on the pod.